Welcome to this digital meeting room. As a digital meeting room, we'd like it to be as much as possible like a normal meeting room. So we'd love to see your face. Welcome to those that are still joining. I'd love to see you so that we feel more like we're in a normal meeting room. Okay, people are still coming in. Hello, hello. Okay, so let me start by telling you a little bit about what we're going to be doing today. So in the first part of this afternoon session or morning session, depending where you are, we're going to actually get you to work a little bit, talking about what it's like to work with the medical community and what it's like to work with patient advocacy group. After a short break, we're going to talk about running market tests, where a lot of young innovators and running marketing tests is important. And for those who have joined, I would love to see your face. And we're also going to talk about the different options in terms of regulatory approval for digital health solutions in Europe. But let me start with the usual Mentimeter, also because some of the information will drive the presence at focus groups. So Julie, over to you.
Here.
Okay. So as usual, we'd like to know who you're representing today. If most of you, I think, are representing innovators. And the code is 44953827. Okay, I think we have a little bit more people here, so. So we've got 12 people, but 4 have voted. Take your time. So you write Mentimeter in your browser. And when the window comes up, you put the code that you see at the top of the window, which is 44953827. Okay, great. So we have a lot of innovators here today. We can go on and see the next question. So we'd like to know if you have a medtech device. I don't think we have biotech, but just in case there is in the group, do you have a digital health product or do you have a consumer health product? Okay. So maybe the other person doesn't exactly have a product today. Okay, so yeah, digital health and medtech, that's good. And digital health seems to be winning out. So I'm glad that we have the presentation that we have later, okay? So we're going to be talking about, you can go on, Julie, we're going to be talking about working with medical societies and patient advocacy groups, and I'll mention why this is important. So I'd like to know whether you have what you would consider an established, satisfactory relationship with the medical society of your principal therapeutic area, whether it's menopause, urology, gynecology. And maybe you have some relationships, but they're not with the medical society itself, so then you would choose the middle column. Okay. So most people do not. That's great. Hopefully this session will be helpful then. And you can go on to the next one. Actually, the one who answered yes stupidly was me, so that doesn't count. Okay. And then the same question for patient advocacy groups. Do you have an established satisfactory relationships with the PAG, as we call it, of your principal PA? And this time I'll be sure not to vote. Okay, that's good. Okay. And then the last question is a usual question. We'd like to know where you're calling from today. Oh, yeah, sorry. Have you done any market tests? Because we're going to be talking about market tests. So a market test can be a trial of something, could be a digital market test, could be a physical market test in a territory, in an area, in a region. It's not exactly, I didn't mean market research, but I wasn't clear, so market research counts, and if you answered yes for market research, that's completely fine. Okay, great to see that you're starting to think about market tests. That's really important. Thank you, Julie. And the last call, just to see, I know we have Switzerland and Minneapolis, and let's see what else we have. And Chicago, not Minneapolis, and you told me, and from France. Welcome, Zurich. Okay, great. So I'm going to share screen again. Get started. So why was I wanting to have this session about working with medical societies? But I thought I would start with some stories to have you realize how important it can be. Well, when I was in Medtronic at one point, there was a decision by the neurological marketing people that there were not enough patients getting a deep brain stimulator. Mind you, deep brain stimulation is quite invasive, but still, it's a representative example. And in this specific country, which I won't say which it is, not to embarrass them, they decided that it was too time consuming to do all the marketing to neurosurgeons or to neurologists, and they were doing that anyway. Instead of spending more there, maybe it was time to communicate with patients. And they did quite a lot of patient awareness, and it worked. So the patients went to their neurologists and or to their neurosurgeons and said, oh, I think I want a DBS implant. And the doctors got very mad with Medtronic. They said, patients should not be coming to us, telling us that they're candidates for something. They have no idea, this is our decision. So it really backfired. Another example is when remote monitoring of devices, first came out, which could even be today with a digital app, and the information was going back to the doctor. And the companies were delighted, wow, we have these really smart devices that are with the patient and the information is coming back to you and you can monitor your patient. Isn't that wonderful? And the doctor said, not wonderful at all. And the expression they used is, we don't want to get married to the patients, because there was no reimbursement for them to look at their computer and to see how all of their patients were doing. So this is just to say you kind of have to think through what your product means for the doctors. Now let's use another example. I don't know if PhysiMed is going to be speaking to you later. She may be here or not. I see her name, but she might be working on something else. So let's use Emily as a theoretical example. So you have a peritoneal exercise device, and maybe I'm a woman, I have incontinence, and I heard about this device. I think it's great. And I'm going to tell my urologist about it. And I'm going to say, I think I'm going to do this therapy. So the urologist may say, oh, I haven't heard about it, but that might be a nice thing to do peritoneal exercise. And if the device helps you, go right ahead. He or she may take a neutral position, or he or she may say, oh, yes, I heard about it. That's a great device. That's a great type of exercise. Absolutely, go ahead. Or he or she may say, it's absolutely rubbish. Go see your physiotherapist. Don't waste your money. So the doctor may take a neutral position, in favor position, or he or she may, forget about it. And this has a big impact. So what we want to do is we want to at least try to inform these medical societies what we're doing, so they could either be enamored with our products, or they could be, impartial and let the patients, be open about potentially, taking this therapy. So what I've put on this slide here, menopause, you could talk to gynecologists, or there's the International Menopause Society. There could be many other societies. I'm just using this, as an example. Incontinence, you could talk to your local urology society, or there's the International Continence Society. And then for period health, it's definitely gynecologists. Now, most of you, all of you are in Europe or in US, and you're lucky because looking at this society, this is the example of the International Menopause Society. As you can see, president, general secretary, they're Europeans or Americans, and we have somebody from the UK. The treasurer is from Singapore. We have somebody from Singapore in this group, Australia, and Italy. So it's just to say, the leaders of the International Menopause Society are from countries, that are useful to us and that we probably collaborate with. And then if you look at a little bit more, what they do is, they have webinars. So you could look, what are they saying in these webinars? You could look when they talk about a subject that may be relevant for you. They have an interview series that they share, so go out there. My message is go out there and see what they're doing and what they're saying. And again, the society, this Menopause Society, is very active with online events, professional resources, educational courses. Maybe you go and look what they're saying to something which is close to your product. Looking at incontinence, we have the International Continence Society, which strives to improve the quality of life, very similar to the MS Society of patients affected with this disorder. And since they didn't have the country of origin, I went manually and looked at it. And you can see that it's urologists, mostly urologists. There's a neuroscientist in the US, the lady Lori, and then there's a physio. So already you can see that, incontinence is dominated by urologists with a little influence from research scientists and physios. And you can see that they are Europeans and Americans again. And they also have a program coming up. It's an online with a lot of online resources. You may want to see, for example, PhysiMed, what are they saying about physiotherapy for incontinence? Might be nice to know. They also have ICS TV. So they have all kinds of things on the news, on state of the art, live. So just to say, there's a great opportunity to learn about what these societies are saying and doing about the therapy area of your concern, of your interest. For period health, which we may have somebody from this group, I think we don't have anybody here today. It's a little bit more difficult because it's really just gynecology. And gynecology is more specialized and it's more general, versus menopause and incontinence or specific diseases. But even here, we have an international society and they also have a meeting in October. So I'll go straight to what we'd like to do. We have 2 breakout rooms. And if you answered, I think very few of you answered that you have an established relationship with the medical society. And could you please put in the chat, I should have asked before, if you would like to be in group 1, because in group 1, the discussion is slightly different. And if you don't have an established relationship, then don't put your name in the chat. Okay, so only if you think you have an established relationship. So the established relationship group, I'd like you to discuss, what worked well, share your best practice. What did you do, when you were working with your medical society? What are the positive experiences that you can share with the group? What will you continue to do when you discuss with your local, national, or international medical society? And then what worked less well, things to be careful about. And you have received by email a very simple template just to put a few bullets, if you have any experience, what worked well and what worked less well. And please put your name in the chat if you want to be in this group. And if you don't want to be in this group, then you'll go to a group that we ask you to think about what could be my objectives. If I want to approach the medical society, what can I hope to achieve? What reasonable objectives could you give yourself that might contribute to your business success? So, list a couple of objectives. Obviously, one of them, which I would like to suggest, is actually just informing them that, look, we are working on this product. We are working on this solution. We already have X number of women who have tried it, and I'd love to, get an opportunity to discuss it with one of your representatives. So obviously, you can inform them you exist, but maybe there are some other objectives that you would like to set yourself. So We're going to give ourselves 15 minutes just to break out and talk a little bit about, what are we doing with medical societies? Do we have some best practice to share in group one? Or do we not have an established relationship and we'd like to set some objectives for working with the medical society? And I think I see, yes, so we have Emmeline in group one and Kyoko. You can put Kyoko in group one, Julie, and also Leva. And Julie, you can just put yourself, you can put, take away the microphone so you can tell us when you're ready. Can you, while Julie puts you in the groups, could you look at the slides that you have received that actually have these templates for presentation that we have sent through? They were sent yesterday. So Emily, you have a sore throat like me, and you're going to be presenting for a while now. So you're being very courageous today.
Actually, it's not as terrible as I thought. I didn't talk the whole day to be able to talk today. So.
Perfect. Okay, so I think everybody's coming back. So just to remind everybody, the objective of this group was to share best practice, and they're going to tell us what worked well and what worked less well. Over to group one. And Emily Hahn is going to present for us.
So in the group, we had some of us had really established relationship, and some other have just contact with doctors, and also we exchanged that. What works well? So what works well is to go on congresses or conferences to try to engage the healthcare professional who is exactly specialist on what your on your subject, and try to talk to them in this specific moment. Find a healthcare professional that is really passionate about the topic, and engage them at the very beginning to be sure that they've got this impression, or even if not this impression, but that they can have an impact on the development of the company, and it can be a really good support to have them from the beginning. What works well also is to build a scientific board with several people coming from different specialties. If you need, for example, a gynecologist, a neurologist, or a physio, midwives, whatever you want. Like this, you can have different insight from different healthcare professionals. What also worked well from one of us, it was that to register to some patient association, like for example the Association for Incontinence Advice in the UK, because you have contact with maybe yes, patient, but also experts. And to do workshop are also interesting, but it costs some money. So it doesn't cost a lot, but still people are spending time on your subject. So it's really interesting to have a lot of information at the end, but you need to know that it costs some money. And what worked less well is to meet with all the scientific board members at the same time, because they don't have a lot of time. So it's difficult to have a discussion with all of them, really at a high frequency. It's hard to connect with them without an introduction. You really need to have someone who introduces you to be able to have a nice discussion with a healthcare professional. It also costs some money sometimes to have expert opinion. Maybe people who are in your group since the very beginning will not ask as many as another expert can do later on the project. It's hard also to manage the key opinion leader and to communicate with them, to update them on the progress, to keep them engaged, because it's a really not hard work, but it takes some time also to get in touch with them, to give the information. Or if you lose that, after it's quite hard to come back to your expert and say, okay, 1 year passed and we we advance on that, and that, and you don't know anything right now, but could you explain me, or can you give me an advice on this? So it's hard. So you really need to keep the relationship with the healthcare professional, and it can be hard. That's what we shared in our group.
Great. Thank you very much, Group 1. Does anybody in the meeting room have a question for this group?
I would be interested in how you actually manage KOLs when they ask for the same kind of salary almost as they get from pharma, because there's no way you can keep up to that, right? Does anyone have a good idea?
I think the KOLs that need the salary like pharma are probably not the right KOLs.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because, you know, it's a decision as a KOL. Are they going to do it for the money, even though maybe it's not a deep, passionate interest, but they have the skills and they can help? Or are they doing it because they're so deeply passionate about it and they want to contribute? And the only ones that we can get as the early startups are the latter.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
Fair.
from a sales perspective, it could be a false objection. So maybe they're not really interested and they use that as an excuse, just like sometimes people say, oh, it's too expensive. What they really mean is I don't see the value. So yes, so you have to find the ones that are interested. Okay. Okay, so why don't we hear from Group 2, please? Somebody volunteer. Did you discuss who will present?
Slide.
I sent you the slides so you guys could complete them.
No, we haven't actually received it.
I sent it in the chat. Let me share it with you then.
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, can you guys see it and you can talk through it?
Yeah. So I'll talk to the first bit. We basically figured out that we need to take some time to actually listen to whatever they would record online or on YouTube or on Instagram to understand what is really top of the individual's minds when they actually share information, and then make our request to them basically, fitting their needs, to make sure that we have kind of an open door and we can start talking to them.
I can talk about the third point, maybe.
Yeah.
So one of the ways that we discussed about how to approach these medical societies and medical professionals is, give them something that could potentially benefit their practice, or if they're in research or something like that. For example, sharing data from apps, symptom tracking apps or some other apps that we have, or propose some kind of support with our device for clinical trials, or, suggest, some kind of support in that sense. And just kind of gain visibility like that and make sure that they take you seriously, approach them in different ways. And that was what some of the things we discussed, and also just kind of a holistic management of health, like connecting different kind of specializations like psychiatrists and neuroscientists and neurologists and gynecologists, and kind of, bridging that gap. I don't know if we personally can do it as startups, but, this would be the idea eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think what you can see from this slide is that, you really want to explore, you want to understand their needs, you want to try to, what are they actually talking about? So it's all about starting to approach them. And in terms of the different specialties, that's a good comment, and you might have to do that in your, startup working life. But from a medical society perspective, taking the example of the Incontinence Society, we saw there are urologists, physiotherapists, some research scientists. But, if you go to other specialties, you're creating more work for yourself. if you decide that this society is important for me, if the different specialties are not in the same society, then it's another project. It doesn't have anything to do with the project of developing a relationship with a specific, medical society. So thank you for that. So what I'd like to do now before we have a little break is to have a little discussion about patient advocacy groups, because we don't have time for another breakout session. So maybe I'd like to throw out for discussion. So patient advocacy groups, what I wanted to discuss is, what are their objectives? What are they trying to achieve? And also, what are their information needs? That's what I wanted you to think about. And we know that patient advocacy groups are not always, in existence, and that they are the way they work is very culturally dependent, because some cultures are more discreet about talking about their disease, and some cultures are very overt. Some people like to share in the pain. Some people, don't want to share their condition, but they're becoming, I think there's constantly more patient advocacy groups out there. They typically have, medical doctors as advisors. They typically have a quite well organized, group of people that, just like the medical societies, they'll have a treasurer, they'll have somebody in charge of communication. They typically run support meetings where they bring, people together to discuss topics. They typically have a newsletter. The more well-funded they are, the more they raise money through, bike riding or any kind of charity work, the more they tend to be well organized. So I'd like to throw out to hear if anybody in this group has experience working with the patient advocacy group. None? Okay. What now? Let's imagine for 1 second, that you decide to approach one of these societies. Can you think of why they might want to talk to you? What are their information needs? Yes, please.
We have connections with a number of them on social
Okay.
media. And I think because we were the first perimenopause, menopause app, and we were the only one for 3 years. And I think a lot of the perimenopause, menopause groups felt like they were sort of shouting into the wind for a long time. And so I think we all just sort of kind of bonded together.
So were they happy to have the information that you existed? Were they happy to talk to you?
Absolutely. And we sort of, because nobody was really listening to us, we sort of had to form our own little, as we call it, our own little Menno Warrior Girl Squad on Twitter. And, and that was 5 years ago, and support each other. And it wasn't like a formal arrangement, but, these are become sort of our online friends. And also we would amplify whatever they were doing on all of our outlets. And they did that in turn for us. And when they would do their campaigns, we would talk about that with people who we don't use the term users. We use the term sisters for the people who subscribe to our app. So we would talk about what they were doing with our sisters, and try and help their cause along with whatever they were doing, and vice versa. So we don't have any formal arrangements with anyone, but we've had informal arrangements with a number of groups.
And it's been beneficial for you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, great. That's a great example. And, let's think about if you were the leader of a patient advocacy group, and, maybe 2 hours down the road, there's a company that maybe run by a woman who is developing a solution for the patients that you are serving. Imagine, how embarrassing if somebody asks you and you don't, actually know that that company exists. Imagine that you're writing a newsletter to your members, to your sisters, to your the people that are in your society. Of course, you can tell them about meetings, you can tell them about events, but you also need to tell them, you're also going to want to tell them about new treatments, new solutions, things that young researchers are working on, things that the university is working on, things that, young entrepreneurs are looking at, or suffering patients so they have a need to tell their community that we are on top of innovation. Look, this is happening. So I guess my point would be to encourage you that they also need you. It's not only them that you that need them. They also need to be on top of people working on solutions for their patients. So don't be shy to approach them and say, hey, even if it's just to spend 10 minutes to let you know what I'm working on at the beginning, because maybe you're early stage, you're not like Cindy, you're not ready with a finished product. And also the other excuse is, how can I finalize my product development? If I don't get feedback from you as a patient advocacy, I need to hear what you and your members have to say. And maybe you can, or if you're still developing a product, or when you develop a new product innovation, you could ask for a focus group to get feedback on your prototype. This is a perfect opportunity. And they may, it's not always easy. They may say, no, we're too busy, but ultimately it's also part of their mission. So I would like to throw it out again, whether anybody has had any experience showing a patient advocacy group a prototype of what they're working on, or a product concept, or a problem that they're trying to solve.
Us, actually, we tried,
Okay.
but I don't know if urinary incontinence is not problem, to be we don't feel really a patient. So when you have urinary incontinence, you don't really join a group of people who have the same problem than you. And the same thing maybe for menopause. I don't know if, menopause is not a problem itself. I mean, so do you join a group for that? So we didn't really find group like this. We tried to also join like a Facebook group linked to these targets, but it was not easy either to really administrate this group, being an industry, or even if you don't want to be commercial, it's quite hard. So I don't know if one of you have also tried to get like a B2C group, like Facebook group or something outside of the patient.
Can I just ask a quick question before we leave the word to Sanjana? So what you're saying is there is no incontinence patient advocacy group in France. Okay.
No, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. And there is the menopause patient group in the US. So that's important that it's not always there. Sanjana?
Yeah, so since we are creating like a midlife platform, so like more holistic health, so we've created like a Facebook group, and we're trying to get people to talk about different problems. So it's not only incontinence or only menopause or perimenopause or something. It's just something like that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we are also getting them to kind of test our prototype in a sense, because we're having conversations with them. So I don't know whether that's an approach, but they're not, like you said, it's not, they don't consider themselves. So if you talk to them and ask them if you have any health problems, the first thing they say is no. So it's like, and then you keep digging and you keep talking, and then you realize that they're like, yeah, oh, but this I have, and that I have, oh, this back pain, oh, this pain, oh, I'm not able to sleep. So, then you kind of unravel all these problems that they're actually facing. But if you immediately ask them, like if you ask them if you have urinary incontinence, the first thing they'll be like, oh my God, no, of course not, So I'm just saying, like, we have to also think about the way we're approaching these patients, women, let's say.
Yeah. That's a very good point.
there's a reason we're called My Sisters and not the Menopause.
Menopause. Right. I get it. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. That's very good. Yeah. So basically some therapeutic areas are much harder than others, for sure. And in this group, we don't have an easy one.
Yeah. Hey, Marta, is a patient organization always really only patients, or would a group like Pelvis Suisse, which is a group of physiotherapists that engages actively with patients, also would that also count the patient association?
No, but it would be equally good to talk to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good to talk to them because they know the patients, just like you said, so they could be a nice substitute. They could get you access to the patients. They know the patients, and they also talk to the doctors. So they're really a great group to work with. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I failed to bring that up. That's a very, very good point. Very important point.
Is there a place? Is there a need for like a government to list all of the patient associations?
No.
Most likely not, huh?
No. There's only the list to list the trials, and maybe sometimes you can find some information from the trials themselves. I think you could also find it from, for example, we were sharing the Urology Medical Society before, and we saw that one of the leaders in the International Incontinence Society is a physiotherapist. So you could reach out to people like that to find out, you could. So again, you kind of use the medical society as an expert group to get more information.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Sanjana, how has been your experience with your Facebook group? Did you get some? How did it go? What are you working on? Can you remind me?
So it's a women's health platform. We're still developing our prototype, but we want to do like holistic health management for midlife women.
Okay.
So the thing is, initially you have a lot of response, and now it's the dull phase, let's say. I mean, initially people are very excited and like say, oh, this is great, and things like that. But after a point, the interaction and the engagement kind of slips, but we're still pushing. That's just one of our ways of connecting with women, so we're also doing other ways. But yeah, it's ups and downs depending on what you're talking about. There's more engagement, and so we also kind of opened it. It's become a worldwide group. It started only with a group in Switzerland, and now we decided to open up to the rest of the world. So if you're all willing to join and engage, we'll be happy to have you. Look for us on Facebook, Miara Women. So no, but I think it's just we need to have conversations, and
absolutely.
And it's not about one particular product. It's about women's health, So
yeah, one thing that comes to mind again, because of the lack of patient advocacy groups in the therapy areas of our interest. Maybe one group that might provide some help is there's an organization called Healthcare Business Women Organization. So it's a bunch of women who work for MedTech, Biotech, Healthcare Business Women Association. I have to remember the exact acronym. Maybe, they could also support you as your sisters. You could reach out to them. They have a lot of contacts in industry. They're all people that are working in industry. I think they're global. Is
it called Health Tech Women European. Or something? Health Tech.
I'm going to share it.
Okay.
I know they're all throughout Europe and also in US. So I'm just going to share it. They tried to recruit me, but I said, I don't have time. There we go. Maybe they could do something. I see they have corporate partners. So I guess they get some money from industry. I think it's very cheap to join, and they have a bunch of events. Okay, they have a conference coming up in November. I don't know, maybe you could you could reach out to them. It's not the same thing. It has nothing to do with patient advocacy, but maybe you could, they could run some surveys among their members or provide you some feedback, or you could, they have meetings in Switzerland. I think they have in France as well. You could go to one of their meetings and maybe talk to them. Who knows? Might be an opportunity. Okay.
One thing that I encountered actually through my work in startups for biotech is that there's different types of patient organizations. Some of them are actually focusing on policy, so driving change in how some specific awareness is driven. Yeah, and the other one are focusing more about the patients itself, how they're treated and how they get educated. So there's, I guess, also a difference in how to engage with them depending on what their focus is, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually, which reminds me of another thing. Of course, it's not something easy to do for people like we have in this committee here today, but some of the patient advocacy groups were actually set up by biopharma because they wanted to lobby, they wanted to bring attention to the disease, and there was no patient advocacy group. So they find one motivated patient and they're like, okay, I'm going to give you a grant and you get started. And this is you set up a nonprofit, and this grant is part of my giving. It's not part of my business, it's part of my, donations. And you go ahead and you lobby for patients to have access to this therapy, which, by the way, includes my drug. So sometimes some of the patient advocacy groups were set up by industry. So theoretically, if you were, to raise $12 million, you could support the patient advocacy group for women's health in your country or region that they go and scream and fight. So. Okay, so I think we're going to take a little break, and we're going to come back at 3:30. Is there any other comments from the group? I think it's been a nice session. Maybe I have some closing comments. I think that as we saw from the first group, that when they shared, what worked well. A lot of things worked well, reaching out, daring to dare, start talking to them, find the ones that are motivated. There's always, don't worry about rejection. A lot of people will, in terms of medical societies, will say no, but then you'll find the one that is motivated, see who is publishing, writing, speaking about topics that are close to you, see if you can share some of your data. And just be persistent, and you'll find your champion. And then your champion will open door in the society, and things will get easier. And as they say, the first days are always the hardest days. So, and yeah, make sure that you know what your society is actually doing so that you're the expert on it. Can only support. And by the way, I also saw, just another quick comment as we have 2 more minutes. I saw that there was a McKinsey report, one of those free reports that they put out, that the medtech industry is really starting to use social media to communicate with healthcare practitioners. I looked at it briefly. I was trying to find which channel. I was trying to see if it was LinkedIn or what it was. But certainly it looks like the companies are realizing that, maybe mailers and maybe, LinkedIn and online. I think they also included online events or webinars, that this whole area of digital was a good way to communicate with their clients, and that it was not, of course, a substitute, but something that can be done alongside, the usual work. So maybe you go out and see that report. Why not? It's for free. It's out there. Maybe there's something that you can learn from it. Okay, so you're welcome to stay here. You're welcome to grab a coffee, and we're going to start in 15 minutes, and we're going to hear from Emmeline. So Emmeline, drink some tea so that your voice will be ready for the next session. See everybody. See you. I think we have an exciting session coming up, and I wanted to just talk about market test for a second before you hear from Emmeline Hahn. I was reading this article recently and following a conversation with Emily, and I thought, wow, market tests are really a great idea. There's this nice article you might want to look at. As you can see, it's very recent from summer 2020 from MIT's management school called MIT Sloan. And their article was all about, if you want to make better decisions, start experimenting. So I'm just going to share the 4 lessons from this article. This article is a little bit focused on randomized controlled trials, but I think everybody that you could possibly do, but in the social science, but I think the lessons apply to everything. And they have a lot of examples from Alibaba and Facebook, so online digital platforms that are also relevant for a lot of us here. The first one, you're going to say it's kind of obvious, but really nice to hear, to systematically embed experiments in your company's decision-making process. So accept that you have to run experiments, be willing to do them regularly, and learn from there. The second one is make sure that you know why they work. So not only, okay, they work, they don't work, it was good, it was bad, try to find out the why, the reason behind. The third one, I found this kind of funny. They say test for broad-based and long-term outcome, and they define long-term as over several months. I guess my generation finds that to be short-term, but in today's fast-moving world, I guess that's considered long-term. So, if you are testing something online, you might want to test it for 2 days. You might want to just test a simple ad, test a simple concept. But if you can, sometimes also let it run for longer, and you can learn more from it. So I guess that recommendation is not to only do short-term tests. And then I was surprised to hear this one, aim for transparency. So let your stakeholders know that I am running these tests and I need to understand how you react, and I don't have to hide necessarily from you. So to engage with your stakeholders and let them know that you're running these tests. So I hope that that's, a good introduction for what's coming next. And I'd like to hand over to Emily Hahn from PhysiMed. I had a chance to have a mentoring session with her, and the fact that she was running these tests came up, and I was quite impressed. And I thought this is a good opportunity, to share with this group and for her to tell you what she learned. So Emily, let me know if you can share screen or if we need to make that possible. Julie?
I think it will be okay.
Okay, great.
Let me just again. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, thank you, Marta, for the invitation. My presentation will be in 2 parts. So a little one just to explain what we are doing at PhysiMed and what is the product, and just to understand the context of the product to be able to understand the test that we are doing afterwards. And then we present you 4 tests that we are running. Some of them are, one of them is over, but we are running still some tests right now. So we created PhysiMed 4 years ago in 2017, and we developed actually a smart Kegel trainer for pelvic floor training at home to treat incontinence or prolapse. So we are in France, and we are now 13 people. So it's not to you that I will learn that incontinence, it's a big problem. It touches 1 out of 10, 1 out of 3. It depends of the literature of women, and it has a really big, strong impact on the daily life of women. So the pelvic floor here is a muscle that hold the organs, and also need to be strengthened in order to stop urinary leaks, have faster postpartum recovery, avoid prolapse, or increase sexual well-being. So when I just realized how important was the pelvic floor at any age, actually, of a woman, it's not just in the postpartum period, but also all during life of woman, and how taboo was also the problem with healthcare, with incontinence. We decided with 3 other co-founders to create, so Physimed, to develop this product, which is actually a device here with which this part is internal, so you put that in the vagina, and this part is out. And then when you squeeze your muscle, there is some sensor here who send a signal in the smartphone, and you can control actually the games into the smartphone. So you can, with 20 mini games, do your pelvic floor training and your education at home. So it's what we called a biofeedback device, because you are controlling the device that you are using. It is a wireless device, so there is no wire. It's this, you can do a short session between 5 and 20 minutes, and you can follow the progress over the time. And now, thanks to our last clinical trial, we know that we can have results after 3 weeks. So that's how it works. So I said this part in intravaginal and this part is out. There is here the Bluetooth that connect to the smartphone. Obviously, we developed the product with quality biocompatible materials. You can use it for long term. It's not just when you have children, but also maybe a few years later, if you have this problem again, you can use it if needed. And the mobile application is based on the medical protocol. So we have 20 games, but it is more for to involve the patient in the re-education, because it is important to do the exercises to get the results. That's why we put those games on the app. We have also a reminder to stay motivated. You can follow your progress over the time on different indicators. And it's a smart application because it can adapt to each woman depending on their progress. The smart algorithm can adapt the protocol that's proposed to the patient. And we also developed a personalized program, personalized by physiotherapists, but this functionality comes from a test that I will explain just after. So it costs €199. It's a B2C product. It is not reimbursed. And when we started to sell the product, we started only online because it was the easiest way for us. Of course, we thought about pharmacies or other physical places to sell the product, but it was not easy. We didn't have the expertise to go to the pharmacies and talk to them, so we didn't really went on this channel at the beginning. And we have always worked with healthcare professionals like midwives and physiotherapists and gynecologists. We created a scientific book at the beginning, but as I said just before, it's quite hard to keep them. And so at one time we were a little bit stuck on our impact, on our power to talk to healthcare professionals, and we didn't know how to go further. And that's also a purpose of one of our tests. So the first test the 4 tests I will explain is the first one. We test the medical sales representative with a medical laboratory called Pierre Fabre in France. It's a mid-size laboratory. And we wanted to check if the gynecologist and midwife were interested by proposing our product to the patient, even if it was not reimbursed and it cost almost 200 euros in a country where almost everything is reimbursed when we talk about healthcare. So we were not sure about that, and we wanted to test it. The second test, and I will explain a little bit more after. The second test we ran was to test another channel, not online, but the pharmacy channel. So that's, and to test that, we did a partnership with a company called Hartmann. It's a German company who is really strong in pharmacies. And two other tests with a company called ACT, and those two tests will are more to check the targets and also the channels. Actually, it was more the target group that are interested, and target countries and business model. It's three tests that we will run. So the first one with Pierre Farm. So we started at the beginning just only with 1 year tests. Actually, we were an incubator in France, introduced me to Pierre Farm, and we discussed and we said, okay, let's try for a 1 year test. And the sales rep actually visit gynecologists and midwife with ME product, but with other product as well. And why they are interested in that is because they have product in gynecology or in feminine care, but they have always the same product since like ages, and they need innovation to enter the doctor's offices. So that's why with ME, they had this innovation to present, and it was easier for them to get appointment, meeting, discussion, and so on. And then, of course, after they talk about their usual products. But for us, the objective was really to validate the validation of the attractiveness of non-reimbursed B2C products. And actually, ME has been really well appreciated as an alternative to other treatment. And we have, most of the time, we have people who say, okay, it should be interesting if we can have a reimbursement on that. But surprisingly, also other healthcare professionals say that's good that is not reimbursed, because sometimes you don't need all the time to have reimbursed product. You can also pay sometimes for your health. So that's also an insight that I wouldn't expect at the beginning from them. So we gave a lot of support and information, flyer, poster to this group to help them to convince the healthcare professional. It took time, but we really built a trust relationship with them. And now we are working with them for 3 years, and it works really well. But at the beginning, it was not easy. It's a quite big company. It's not the same way of working. But it's it worked. And so at the end of this of the first year of test, we decided to develop actually a new functionality for a healthcare professional. As I just said before, the possibility to personalize patient program, patient session at home, because it was one feedback we had from midwives. And we also decided that it could be a good idea to develop the pharmacy distribution channel, because as it works really well with healthcare professionals, we said it could be really interesting to have the healthcare channels also, not only online. So that's why actually we were.
That's just, maybe you can close it and reopen it and it'll work. Yeah. That's very interesting, because a lot of people say that, no, in France, you cannot sell any product that's not reimbursed. People will not go for it. They just come with that assumption. And it's great that you did a test and proved them wrong, that if they see the value, that, okay, not everybody, but there's some people willing to invest. So you can already see and how great to hear that the laboratory Pierre Fabre, the pharmaceutical company, hasn't really been innovating, and for them it was something new. Great. Okay.
That's fine. Okay. Yeah, and it's interesting what you said, Marta. A lot of people told us never any French people will buy a product 200 euros. It's not possible, but finally, yes, it is. And we also had the same thing in Germany because pelvic floor training was not at all something that people are used to. And so we did a market research, and all the information from the market research told us that, well, we don't think it will be a nice market, but as we are really, Germany is really close to here, we really wanted to try and to see what we can learn from this market. And now it's actually our second main market. So sometimes the market research are important, but it also gives you some information like from the past, and as long as you have not put your product on the market, it's hard to have a really insight of your feedback on your market. We after PFM, we start to think about pharmacies, but we did not now have the sales representative to go to all pharmacies in France to propose our product. And Hartmann came to us actually like a few months ago, and they have their one of their office close to Strasbourg, and so it was quite easy to talk to them. But the main question that we have with them is it possible that when people buy 200 euros of product in a pharmacy, where usually in pharmacy you get product for reimbursed, not for free, but reimbursed. But that was the main question. So we have signed a partnership with them to work with the sales force in the pharmacies. So our objective was to validate the interest of the pharmacy to sell a connected device, one of the most expensive in the pharmacy, and the willingness to pay for a patient. So we developed a lot of support for the pharmacy to sell the product, like nice boxes and flyers and things like this. To help also our partner to sell to the pharmacy. And we proposed also at the beginning really few products to sell. We didn't want in this test to make revenue, but we really wanted to check and to validate this business model. Whatever the revenue we could have from that, it was not important. It was more about testing the market. And actually,
a quick question. What do you mean a few products to sell? A few pharmacies, or just in the pharmacy you put only a few products, only a few samples?
Both. We choose with our partner, we choose 5 regions in France, 5 small regions, 5 sales representatives, and they target some pharmacies. And they propose only like 5 products in each pharmacy at the beginning, not to afraid the pharmacy, and try to have the best of the feedback that we can have, not just a closing door because of the price or the volumes or so on. We really wanted to have qualitative feedbacks. And from them also, at the beginning, they did a list of pharmacies they think it could be interesting, and at the end, the number of the pharmacy who bought the product was not only the one who they target, and it was also an interesting learning from the market. And finally, it worked really well, better than we expected. There are more and more products that cost few hundred euros in pharmacies. So. Yeah, we had a great learning on that. We also learned a lot, like for example, in pharmacies, where to put the product. Is it in the incontinence part? Is it in the postpartum part? Is it? So it really depends on the pharmacy. It really depends on the people who are working in the pharmacy. So we also learned a lot with this test, and now we decided to go further. Another test that we did is we answer a call for application for coming from SCT. So there are still a call in like during the whole year, I think. SCT Venture, if you want to look at that, they are looking for femtech innovation, and so they have a call that you can apply to collaborate with them. So we started a collaboration with these big groups, and this brand Tena is specialized in the incontinence. They wanted to propose a new product to the market, and so we test two markets, one in the UK that I will present here, and one in Sweden that I will just present afterwards. In the UK, we tested a distribution model. They buy the product and then they commercialize it to their own customers, and they do all the marketing, the shipping, the customer service, and so on. So it's really a distribution model as any distributors. We wanted to validate the target group because Tena is more a group of people that are 40, 45 plus in the UK. And we wanted also to see if the Tena brand was a good association with EMI, with all our, if Tena could sell a product like an innovative one and a technical product, because it is not usually what they are selling. So what we did, we adapt the packaging for co-branding, because now we have a product called EMI by Tena for this market. We adjust all the assets to launch the product. We did, and we are now working with them every week. We have a weekly call and so on. So it's still running in the moment. We don't have big conclusion, but I will give you my learnings after explaining in the comparison what happened in Sweden. So with the same company, SCT, we tried another market, Sweden, with another brand called Libero. I don't know if some of you know this brand. In France, it doesn't exist. It's a brand for diapers. For babies, actually. Diapers, for baby, and they have also soap and shampoo and so on, but only for babies. So it's a totally different target. We target here the young woman, actually. So we wanted to validate this target group. Is it the young women that are more interested in this kind of product? Is the Swedish market receptive to that? And can we also associate the two brands? So it is not a distribution model as we have in the UK. It's what we call a lead acquisition model. Libero has a website and an app, also a mobile app. And in the mobile app and the website and in all their communication, they are talking about EMI, but they are, when you click on, okay, let's see the product, for example, you end up on a Physimet Swedish website. So it's our brand, our design, and we take care of the customer service, the shipping and everything. So it's not exactly the same model than in the UK. And they take actually a commission on all the product that we sell. So it's running still at the moment, but what we can see is we just started the test like 2 months ago, so it's really hard to say something, but we can already see that the young target seems to be more receptive than the older one, even if the older one have more problem with incontinence. So that's interesting insights. Also in the UK, there is one competitor. In Sweden, it's really a free market. So we also learn about that. It's easier to have, but the conversion rate also is more important in our websites. I mean, in the EMI website, because we have not because of, but one of the reasons is maybe because we have less click between the time when you arrive on the page and when you pay. So we have a lot of learnings like this around the target groups, the business model, but also the tool that you are using to sell the product, the websites, the image also of the product, because Tena has a totally different image than us, for example. So when a customer arrives on Tena website, it's a different user experience than in Physimed's website. So yeah, that's actually all the 4 tests that we are running, and we are learning a lot. And we also do a lot of different tests, the A/B testing all the time on our website. We test also different communication messages and so on. But it was the 4 tests that we are running with external partner, and what I was talking about to Marta when we talked together.
I was going to say thank you very much. I wanted to just ask a first question, then I throw it out. How did you set the targets for these tests together with your partner? Because I guess the test would have an objective. How did you set those?
So it was different depending on the partner. With SCT, we developed an entire business model to see what conversion rate we could have, how many visits we could have on a website, how many products we could sold. And we really built that together with a high transparency with SCT. With Pierre Fabre, we just took their usual model of way of working. So we, as they are doing with other partner, we did not think different things. And Artman, how we set up the goals, they choose the goal. They said, okay, we should to be able to say that it is a successful test, we should achieve this number of unique sold. Actually, it appears okay for us and achievable. So it was more coming from them.
Okay, great. I'd like to throw it out to the floor to ask her questions. Sanjana?
Yeah, very interesting tests, Emmeline. So I was wondering, do you think that in each country you would have to devise a new kind of distribution model for your product? Or is it that you're testing different models for business models so that you know once you scale your markets, you'll know which one is the most promising one?
I think we are open, and I think it could be different depending on the market. Actually, it's already the case right now. We are selling online in some European country, directly online, but in Asia, for example, we have distributor because we do not know exactly how to sell a product there. So it's a totally different business model as we work with distributor, they do the marketing and everything. So as long as you manage your market, which is not easy with a B2C market or with an app, because everyone can download the app and everything. I think it can be okay to have different business model. Depending also on the partner. I mean, if you have a partner who is really strong in the market, like for example, in Sweden, Libero is really, really strong, like 90% of women who have children less than 5 years as the Libero app on their phone. So it's really interesting. So in this case, you win everything to go with this model.
Commission model. That's
So
interesting.
Would SCT want to, do they want to sell either through Libero or through Tena, or whichever one works best, or what is their intention? Do they want to scale to the rest of Europe depending on the test results? How do you see the SCT intentions?
I see their intention. They don't really know what they want to do right now. That's why also it's also a test for them, definitely. They are planned to open also other markets, definitely. I think they don't really know how to do and what we are we are really struggling right now with them, with the organization, because it's a huge organization. They have and really it's a really big potential for us, and it's great to have them as a partner, but it's also hard to have a partner that is as big, because for the vision, they told us that they would like to open new markets with a distribution or commission model. They don't know, but at the end, I'm not sure the people I'm talking to is the one who will decide that. So I'm totally open, not sure yet.
Hi, Martina.
Hi, everybody.
Nice to meet you. Nice to see you. Like, can we see you? There we are. Okay, so Martina comes from Confinis. She's a highly qualified person. I think you have a PhD in biorobotics, and you're also an engineer, and you're now also become a regulatory expert, and she really knows what it takes to bring a digital device through regulatory approval in Europe. I think we know that there are various options, and when we were discussing preparing this session, Martina said, a lot of people just asked me, do I have to have my device qualify as a medical device? Do I need to do that? Obviously, there are pros and cons in both sides. So thank you very much for being here. And let's take through this presentation so we can have a discussion and on the different options and get the questions from the floor.
Thanks a lot, Marta, for inviting me here and to give me the possibility for this presentation. So I'm gonna.
And Martina is in Geneva. She's talking to us from Geneva.
Yes. I'm gonna try to share my screen. Let's see. Do you see the presentation?
It's working, yeah.
Okay, great. So yes, again, thanks for inviting me here, and I hope that I'm gonna be focused a bit in what you do, because I don't know which is the status of indeed all the companies that are part of the program. So my apologies if I'm gonna be basic on maybe stuff that you already know.
Just quickly, the 50% of them do have digital apps, so it's perfect.
Okay. But some of them, they have medical device, some of them no, and they already know if they have medical device or not, or they are deciding if to have medical device or not.
Maybe you can answer her. Are you a medical? Who has a
medical device? Mm-hmm.
Anybody? Nobody else?
We don't have a medical device, but my question would be, what's the tipping point? Is there, yeah.
Okay, so I mean, since most of you don't have medical device, I think that I'm gonna try to improvise a bit and yes, try mainly to focus and answer the question of Eva.
Martina,
Yes?
I just say that, I'm working for the medical device.
Okay, then okay, we give a little introduction. We try to focus on this border between what it is a medical device, what not, and what you need, which are the regulations in case you are a medical device in Europe and in case you are not a medical device.
Yes, and it's good because some of them are early stage, Martina, and they might want to become medical device. So don't worry, it's highly relevant to the group.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Then I'm gonna follow what I plan and just going fast and some of the topic. So indeed, I would like to start indeed focusing a bit on indeed the question, medical device or not medical device. Since I'm an engineer, I'm going to use the engineeristic approach. That is, I put myself in the worst case scenario, introducing first what you have to do if you are a medical device, because this is the most regulated environment and the worst case. And then I'm going to show you indeed which is the framework of regulation that that are applicable specifically for digital health, a digital health app, in case indeed you are anyway not a medical device. So we are going to see which is the assessment route toward the CE mark. We are going to also have some hint on on the reimbursement of the app, because it's something that I know Marta was interested to have. So about the medical device, I mean, at the moment in Europe, medical device is regulated through two regulations, the medical device regulation and the in vitro diagnostic medical device regulation. This is quite new because they are basically in force since 2017, but basically the year or the real application is this year for the medical device regulation, and is going to be in 2022 for the in vitro diagnostic medical device regulation. This regulation, they substitute all the directives that were before available. And for simplicity, I'm going to focus a bit more on the medical device regulation, but because I think it's more relevant for your case. But in case of in vitro diagnostic medical device regulation, also there we can have software, we can have app also connected to devices that are in vitro diagnostic. And what I'm going to say is basically a bit similar. So the border of to be a medical device or not to be a medical device, stay first in the definition of medical device that is provided in the medical device regulation. And in particular, it is a medical device. In your case, we focus on software, a device that is intended by the manufacturer to be used alone or in combination. So also if you do standalone software, can be a medical device for human beings for one or more of the following specific medical purpose. And we have this list. In this list, we have in the first category anything that is related to diagnosis, prevention, monitoring, prediction, prognosis, treatment, or alleviation of disease. In the second, we have diagnosis, monitoring, treatment, alleviation of, or compensation for an injury or disability. In the third, we have investigation, replacement, or modification of the anatomy or of a physiological or pathological process or state. Then we have something that is more linked to the in vitro diagnostic. For the moment, we don't see. And then I think it is relevant also for this program to say that there is a specific note for a device for control or support of conception. Already with this definition, basically you see that if you develop a digital health app, it's not really very easy not to be a medical device. I mean, this definition covers a bit all the aspects possible. And in addition to what is the definition from the medical device regulation, we have also this guidance that is released by the Medical Device Coordination Group. So it's a guidance that helps us a bit to understand how practically we comply with the requirement of the regulation. It's basically telling us other two elements that are fundamental in case of software. So you have also to consider if the software that you are developing is performing an action on data that is different from storage, archival, communication, or samples or simple search, because if the software does just this action, you might not be a medical device. And you have also to see if the software does an action for the benefit of just individual persons or specific for each individual, or if the action is for community or a group of people. In case it's for a community, you also might not be in a medical device, basically. So here a bit what is the border. So, I mean, it's difficult because you have to consider your intended use of the device that should not be covered in the definition of the regulation. And at the same time, also this aspect of what actually the device is doing with the data that are collected. Now, if you have some doubt, there is this document, this manual on borderline products that for the moment is updated, is not updated, is still referring to the old directive, but it's a living document that has been updated all the time. So we think that it's gonna come also something that is updated for the medical device regulation. Anyway, in this document, there is a long list of example, really practical on medical device and not medical device. And there is really a lot on application and software, and especially also for birth control, fertility, because all these apps that before were really not, could be not medical device, or they were medical device of very low class of risk. Now they risk to be and to become something that is a medical device and even of very high risk. And this allows me to introduce also another important element that you have to consider also if you are a medical device or if you are thinking to become a medical device. That is the classification. So in Europe, we have 5 different classes the class go to the risk that the device is bringing to the user. And of course, we go from 1 that is the lowest risk to 3 that is the highest risk. According to the risk classification of your device, you could have different procedures to demonstrate conformity to the regulation. So, I mean, what you have to do change a lot depending which risk class is the device. What determines the risk class is the intended use of the device. So sometimes you have devices that are really look similar, they seem the same, but the claim that the manufacturer does what is written in your instruction for use is different, and the device could be medical device or not, or could be even of a different class, even if they look like really very similar. So it's really trivial, important to define, to be very careful of how you define your intended purpose and the intended use of basically the device. Then another thing that I was saying is that indeed what happened is that under the previous directive, many applications, they were considered a class 1 device if they were medical device, so very low risk, and we will see later on that they could enter in the market quite easily. Why now, with the new medical device regulation, what we see is that most of them, they are going to become higher risk, and they are going to generally become a class 2A device, if some bigger risk is not included. This is why, because basically among these classification rules that are included in the medical device regulation, we have some that in this are specifically related to software. And in particular, we have this rule 11 that is the one most relevant for standalone software. And this rule 11 is basically saying that if your software is providing any information that is used to take a diagnostic or therapeutic decision, or your software is used to monitor vital physiological parameters, this is a class 2A. And you see basically also here, I mean, basically is included almost everything. It's really difficult that you're going to develop a software that is not doing if you are doing a medical device that is not really doing this action. So it's really low, very few cases in which you can have now a software of class 1. And also you can be a higher class depending what kind of risk for the users you're going to bring. Also, in particular, there is also a specific note, because it was seen among different apps and different devices that were on the market, the fact that now there is this rule 15 that is telling us that software that is used for contraception will be classified as class 2B. So again, in the past, you will see a lot of these cases. They were underclassed, risk were low, and then in reality, risk were high. And so now the regulation for this is much more clear. It's telling us better how we should classify the device, basically. So I'm going to skip this example because I think that, yeah, I mean, more or less, I understand that you already know who has a medical device or not. We can go on that later.
Sorry, Martina, give one example anyway, just to show the.
Okay. I'm just then go on them very fast. So, I mean, we have one case. First, I wanted to show you basically an example of an app that is not a medical device. And this basically, for example, an app that can be used to basically allow the communication between the patient and caregivers while giving birth. In this case, basically what is important to consider is that the app is used to store data on each moment of contraction during delivery, for example, after a healthcare professional established that a woman is in the process of giving birth. And the intended use of the app is claimed to be improve the quality of communication between the patient and caregiver. So since the claim is on communication and the action is just storing data, according to what we have shown before for the guidance document, this app, for example, cannot be considered a medical device, thanks to indeed this kind of definition. Instead, just to give you another example, this is instead the case of an app that is instead a medical device. We have indeed a standalone software application for conception and contraception purpose. So in this case, is claim that the product is a natural method of birth control. It is a standalone software application which combines the calendar rhythm method, the body basal temperature method, and the cervical mucus method to prevent pregnancy and target the most fertile time for getting pregnant. So yeah, I mean, basically this is instead something that can be considered a medical device software for the kind of purpose that it has. And it is also considered a class 2B device because of this specific rule 15 that we saw before. Everything now that is related with conception, contraception, it's more, it's considered at high risk. Okay, then, I mean, in the case, if you are a medical device, you are in a very high regulated environment. So as I said, the regulation that are in force is the medical device regulation, the diagnostic medical device regulation. You might have also the Gdpr. I'm going to come back to it later. So the General Data Protection Law, basically. Then we have also a lot of standards. Standards are there to basically help us to basically address the problem of conformity in a standardized way. So you can follow or not follow standard if you want, but if you follow them, you are sure that basically the methodology that you are providing you to be compliant with the regulation is actually recognized without a lot of discussion that you will do if you don't follow the standard, if you follow partially the standard. So we are going to focus on some of really few of them in a moment. And then we have guidance document. Also, you find that I mentioned already one. Guidance documents are not laws and not standard. It's some document that basically help us in a practical way to know really how to be compliant with the regulation. We have some of them. I'm going to mention some of them. So let's say that what is very important to mention is that the medical device regulation, apart the classification, introduce another big thing for software and for apps, that is cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is not mentioned clearly and openly, let's say, in the medical device regulation, but thanks to this first sentence that is, in particular, including the information security sentence, it became a requirement. So it's something that you have to take care and to show that you take care about if you develop app, because it's there also in Europe. Okay, for the rest we can skip. For the rest, the standard, I would say that yeah, to introduce a couple of them that are really applicable in most of the case and quite important. We have this standard 62304, that is the one that is general for all software, not really specific for app. Is basically the standard that describes the software lifecycle process. So it covers software development, maintenance, risk management, configuration management, problem resolution, so all these aspects of software development. And basically, this standard will further classify your device in different classes according again to the risk, because according to the class of the software, you're going to have to perform different activities and document these activities more or less if you are lower risk or higher risk. Then we have another standard that is the 82304. This is important specifically for applications, and because it basically applies to the safety and security of health software that is placed on the market without a dedicated hardware. So it's something that you have really to consider. This standard covers, similarly to the 62304, the entire life cycle, including design, development, validation, installation, maintenance, and disposal of health software product. So it's important to consider this. And then, as mentioned before, you have quite some guidance that also help a bit indeed to know how to comply with the regulation. I wanted to mention here cybersecurity. For cybersecurity in Europe, at the moment, there is not a specific standard. There are things that are coming, but yeah, there is basically just this technical report, for example, that I found a very, very pragmatic, very hands-on approach for determine basically a software requirement that allows to cover cybersecurity. but you have some guidances. So we have this MDCG 2019-16 and the other one released from the International Medical Device Regulation Forum on Principle and Practice for Medical Device Cybersecurity. This is a very useful document, and yeah, they should be taken into consideration, of course, when you develop your device. Now, going toward the market. So if you are a medical device, you want to enter in the market. To enter in the market, you need a CE mark. But sometimes you need to involve the notified body, sometimes no. If you are a class 1, and this is the reason why I introduced you the class, because the entrance in the market really depends a bit on the classification of your device. So if you are a class 1, that means lower class of risk, you can enter in the market without involving the notified body, doing a self-declaration. What you need to do is to anyway have a technical file. So you need to develop your technical documentation and anyway, I mean, show that in your way quality, and I mean, you need to have some data. You need anyway to show that to be sure that the device is safe and is gonna perform, but is a self-declaration that you do your device. In all the other cases, you involve the notified body. Now, I don't want to focus on all this part because, yeah, otherwise we stay here until tomorrow. I think that for your case is relevant the last one, the one on the right. So in general, let's say, because then every case is specific, but generally speaking, the route described in Annex 9 of the NDR, it is this conformity that is based on the quality management system and on the assessment of the technical documentation is the one that is the most generalized way applicable. According to this entrance in the market, you need to develop your technical documentation. You need to have in place a quality management system. The quality management system is a collection of the standard operating procedure and templates. And yeah, and I mean, this basically is there to show that you are providing, you are ensuring quality in the way in which you are developing your product. Now, if you are not a medical device, but still also if you are a medical device, in any case, in all the cases possible, there are a couple of laws that might be relevant. The first one is the Artificial Intelligence Act that came out in April this year. That is basically the legal framework for artificial intelligence. So if you are including artificial intelligence in your device, you have to consider this act. And as I said before, the GDPR, so the General Data Protection Law. This law is basically the law on protection and privacy of all the personal data. Is valid also for companies that are not in Europe, but that are going to treat data of European citizens. So it's important to know. And what I say is a bit like also for the regulatory strategy, is good to know how you can avoid it or if you are going to fall into it. So it's another thing that is very strategical for the company to know which kind of data you can collect, not to be or to have to follow this law somehow. Then you have also the idea release some other guidance and other documents that are not law, but that might be useful as well in this context to have same vocabulary, same understanding in the way in which the device is developed and also for risk and so on. Then to conclude, concerning reimbursement. Having an app that is reimbursed in Europe, is it possible? It's not possible since a lot of time, and is not possible. It seems not really very easy at the moment, and not possible in all the country. The country that is the most advanced seems to be Germany. Germany, since 2019, published this Digital Healthcare Act that basically allows the physician to prescribe digital health application and patient to seek reimbursement from health insurers for the application. They have a specific program that is called DIGA. And in this program, there are these 5 apps that I put on the right that are permanent part of the program, so they are reimbursed. And there are other 15 that are temporary admit. I don't know what is going on for them, but anyway, they are under evaluation. So you have to be part of the program, enter in the program, be part of the program. It seems to me that they are mainly German companies. only. Not sure about external company, how it works if you want to apply there. And then there is Spain and Belgium that are following, and specifically Belgium this year launched this also reimbursement scheme. So probably also the other countries are following, but yes, but for the moment, I mean, this is kind of new. So to conclude, basically, if you are a manufacturer indeed of digital health app, in case that you are medical device or not a medical device, what we encourage you to do is to gain really a clear understanding of the regulatory landscape, because this can speed or slow your development if you don't know it. And try to define in very early stage, a regulatory strategy. If the regulatory strategy is basically where you define if your device qualifies as a medical device or not, how it is classified, and which is this assessment route to enter into the market. Sometimes our client, they ask us to do this regulatory strategy in case they are medical device, in case or not, and how they need to claim or change their claim of the intended use to fall into a class or another class, or be a medical device or not. So everything is possible, and it's something that is really strategic to do at a very early stage. Then you should be also up to date with privacy and security policy, because we saw that, I mean, you're going to collect data, and also there is very strategic to know which data you can collect, what is considered personal data, and which data you can collect or not to be under this law or to avoid to go under this law. So this is also something very, very strategic, I would say. Another point is indeed this to include in your company some interprofessional competencies, because indeed you see you have to deal with science, research, business, communication, but then there is also ethics, legal, regulation, this privacy. There is a lot of different aspects, and all of them, they are important, and they can help you to enter in the market more or less easily, let's say. And then at the end, the last thing that I have to say in this contest is that you should also be open to collaborate with regulatory agency. I mean, if you develop a medical device, especially in the field of digital health, and you include, for example, artificial intelligence into that, or machine learning, you're going to find that you're going to have some problem, let's say, because you will find out that the regulations are not really up to date for this kind of technology, in particular for machine learning. Machine learning, at the moment, you can introduce in the market devices that have algorithms that are frozen. So it's a big limit. I mean, basically, you are not doing machine learning anymore. You are doing it during development, but not during the use. And and this field is evolving, is challenging also for regulators and for the regulatory agency. And so there is a lot of work that is ongoing for that. And also the manufacturer can do their part to speed up this framework. Mm-hmm. And yes, so to conclude, indeed, I mean, since you need to have all these different competencies, sometimes in startups you don't have the possibility to have all these different people and to hire all these different people, so you might need some help in some aspect. And Confinis is the company that I belong to, and indeed is a regulatory firm. So we create compliance worldwide regulatory affairs and quality management. So we are experts in mobile health apps, as well as general medical device, software as a medical device, combination product, in vitro diagnostic medical device. And we follow the customer from the regulatory strategy until really the CE mark, so the entrance in the market, in different ways. So we help in set up the quality management system. We do the regulatory strategy. We can help in supporting developing the technical documentation, the part of the risk design control, in the part of risk management, all these aspects. We perform training if it is needed, and not really to be hands-on on the documentation. And we also perform audits. This is important if you have, for example, a quality management system according to ISO 13485. It's required that you have some internal audit to indeed check that the company is up to date, basically. So with this, I thank you. And yes, if you have any question.
Yeah, Martina, I'm going to be rude, and I have a burning question.
Okay.
Say you decide, okay, I want to register as a medical device. I am going to follow the clinical trial requirements. What are the advantages of having a mobile app that is maybe monitoring some vital physiological parameters. They are not life and death. It's not critical. Maybe it's a 2A. So I'm going for a 2A device. What's the advantage versus not having the regulatory approval?
So, I mean, the fact is that it depends really what is the purpose that you want to bring. Of course, if you don't want it to be a medical device, what you can do is really very limited. I mean, the kind of data you can collect is restricted, and your software cannot do many action rather than basically storage of data or
Okay, so what can I do as a medical device? What can I do as a 2A, medical device that monitors vital physiological parameters? I've gone through the pain. I have this registration. What can I do?
Yes, basically, I mean, you are bringing on the market a device that at the end is going to be helpful to improve the health of people. So this is the main thing, because it's going to be there, the difference somehow is something that has already an impact and a value for diagnosis or prevention or treatment. So if you really think that you want to go towards something that has a value in this way, or is for sure more, let's say, valuable from the medical point of view. I mean, you provide something that treat a disease, or that allows to really understand a physiological process, and that is recognized and safe for this use. And also,
so I can store the data as long as I anonymize the data. I can store it, and then I can use it for publications, presentations. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can do it, and depend which kind of data, because normally it's always anyway anonymized data if possible. But yeah, this you can do it. But over on that, basically, you are gonna provide the people something that they use, and they can self-use. For example, at home, you can indeed have I don't know, something that allow you to have a diagnosis. For example, if you have symptoms, the device can provide diagnosis that are reliable. You can have something that in reality.
2A, would 2A ever be diagnosis, or is that another class?
Can be diagnosis, not of a disease that are. Let's say that for which you can die,
not like, for example, epilepsy,
for flu or other kind of diseases that are normal. Yes, you can even have intervention. I mean, there are all the devices for rehab. For example, I'm thinking about also the sleep app application that helps you basically to improve sleeping or things like this. Is also something that is a medical device at the end. And if you have a device that is a medical device, you are sure that what you have in your hand is really effective, because the problem is that until now, what you have in the hands, many times you have app that you really didn't know at the end if they were put in there with a claim very generic that could be medical, but then doing this distinction as a customer.
Okay, so one of your major answers is credibility.
Yes, credibility, absolutely, and safety as well, because the way in which data are protected in a medical device is higher than what it is in not medical device.
Over to the ladies here that I was rude and I asked the first question. Over to the committee. I'm sure you have questions for Martina. Eva, did you want to ask a question?
I wanted to give it to someone else to start with the first question. I have many questions. So what's the risk? What's the risk if we are actually a medical device and we forget to, request regulatory approval? What happens?
This is a good question. I don't actually know what happens if you claim to be, and then if you are not, if you say that you are not, and then in reality you are.
May I answer?
Yes.
It's Renato. I am the only man in the call.
Thank you.
So maybe I can take it. Great. So you cannot claim without the regulatory approval, which is basically the marketing authorization. You cannot say that you have developed a medical device. So
on the contrary.
What if she doesn't claim, but it should be, but she's using it without the label?
You can go in a gray zone being off-label, which is something that for drugs, for example, is very regulated. And maybe if you are, for example, out of some guidelines or regulation, you could risk some liabilities from regulators or market authorities. So it's always the case to control and to do a due diligence at the beginning. And also complementing the former aspect, being a medical device is for sure more painful, but at the same time, the appetite from investor and from corporate is different. One thing is to say we are developing an app for lifestyle, an app tracking some, let's say, vital parameter, which is okay, but it's not per se something medical. Different thing is if you can claim on your label that you are improving, you're reducing the risk, or you are having an impact on health. So and also the good point is once you have completed the regulatory pathway, you have for sure a barrier to entry for newcomers. So painful at the beginning. If you have a clear pathway after you are on the market, you can move from there having a different perspective.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Does anyone else have questions? Otherwise, I keep going.
Cindy, do you have a question? No, go ahead. And it looks like you can. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Together, so we'll just let Eva keep going.
Okay, sounds good.
You were talking a lot about EU, but of course, Switzerland is not part of the EU. There's other companies, and there's even those of us who are working worldwide. Is there a signal that if we get EMEA approval, that we can just give it a go in other markets, or do we have to do it for every market?
Well, yeah, you have to check a bit which market. Of course, I mean, EU is EU. In EU, you can sell, and probably you might sell also with the CE mark, maybe somewhere else. But for sure, you have to check. I mean, FDA has another, the US has another path with FDA, so it's something else. We do also regulatory compliance worldwide. This is not really my field, but I know also to enter in Asia, in other markets, you always need to see what are the law there and the requirements there. So if you get the CE mark, it's not that you can sell everywhere in the world. I mean, there is anyway some restriction. If you are Swiss, this is a good point. This year things are getting interesting because now Switzerland is a third country with respect to Europe. So I mean, the way in which Swiss company does, anyway, you get the CE mark following, because in Switzerland reality is valid. There is the MEDO law. So it's another law, but that is basically similar to the medical device regulation, and you can get the CE mark with the CE mark as well if you are in Switzerland. You need to use a notified body at the moment it is outside Switzerland to do that, but you can do it. And the only thing is that if you are Swiss, you can sell on the Swiss market, and if you have the CE mark, you can sell in Europe. But you need to have an authorized representative in Europe, and you need to have an importer in Europe for your even if you are soft. And the same is the inverse. I mean, now who wants to sell in Switzerland, they need at least a Swiss representative to sell in Switzerland. So it's not anymore so easy and open as it was until May this year.
Okay, interesting. And how long does it take? I guess it depends on what level we are. Huh?
It really depends on your product. It depends on the class of the device. It depends on many things. But I would say that I mean, we see a bit of everything. It can go. I mean, now I'm thinking to enter into the market, to have the CE mark. You are asking specifically. Yes. It's not. I would say less than an average 1 year at least. It can be more.
Okay. Yeah.
Of course, you need to have clinical data. And
not all the time.
Okay.
Not all the time. Depend a bit, indeed, on the class of the device and what kind of also indication has the device. Because if there is in the market a lot, if the risk is not high and there is on the market already some devices that are similar, for which you can collect clinical evidence with data and with the literature review, you could try. I mean, now this is not the preferred path with the medical device regulation, but it's possible to enter in the market also without data upfront, but in some cases. In other cases, of course, you need to have data. And I think for software is particularly important now. There is all a part specifically on indeed the scientific validity of what you have, what the device is doing in case you are a medical device. So it's important to have data. But in some cases, you can also enter the market without the data and collect the data anyway once the device is on the market and continues to show them in post-market.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know.
I know a little bit about the regulatory pathway for human medicine, and there's an early dialogue possible with the CHMP and stuff, but is that the same here, or is it more a paper-based approach?
So the notified body, that is the organ basically that releases CE mark, they always say that they don't do consulting. To do the consulting, you go to the consulting, so this is good for us, but it's not good for the manufacturer. Yeah. So this is true, but this means that if you approach a notified body and you start to ask questions like, how should I do this, how should I do that, they're not gonna tell you. But you can discuss with them some aspects. So if your device is new for something, or if you have a strategy, for example, that you already present them, I don't know, indeed, for clinical data is a case, many times that maybe you have some data, but you are not sure if it is enough, if it's not enough, this is one case that I have now in mind. You could go to them and present what you have and tell them, is it enough not to have a clinical investigation, or should I do? So if you have a specific question, you bring the question to them with that basically the answer is yes or no, they can do it, but they don't give general advice.
Yeah, okay. Very good. Those were all the questions I had.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for this very comprehensive presentation. It really gives us a very good idea of what we potentially may need to do. Do we have any other questions from the audience before I give a very small summary of today's conversation, because I realize we have 5 minutes left? Okay. Am I sharing? No. Let me share again. Thank you so much, Martina. You're welcome to stay.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. More minutes as we close up here. So the key takeaways from today, from our early discussion: reach out to your medical society, be aware of their activities, membership, priorities, listen to their presentations and become an expert about them. Consider running market tests to evaluate different commercial models in different channels, consumer, pharmacy, medical, in different territories, and see if you can learn and adapt to scale. And then if you have any regulatory questions, why should I get a regulatory approval? Well, it brings credibility and increases corporate interest. It's not absolutely necessary. Just wanted to be aware of the options. If you have any questions, you know who to contact. And I think for a lot of you, you have software that provides information, maybe to monitor vital psychological parameters. You might be 2A or 2B. So with that, I wanted to say thank you to everybody. Thank you for being here.